All right, welcome to Theory Seminar. It's my pleasure to introduce Sid Suri from Microsoft's brand new research lab in New York City. Sid is one of the founding members of that research lab. Prior to that, he was at Yahoo in New York. He did a postdoc with John Kleinberg at Cornell University and got his PhD with Mike Kearns at Penn. Sid has been doing really, it might be pioneering work on using mechanical Turk to do behavioral experiments. And so he's going to be talking to us about one of those.
Yeah, great.
Right, thanks.
Thanks, Jason, for the lovely introduction and also for inviting me here. It's been an absolute pleasure. And today I'm going to talk about cooperation in static and dynamic networks. The first half of this talk was joint work with Duncan Watts, and the second half was joint work with Duncan and Jing Wang, who was an extremely talented graduate student at NYU Stern School of Business. Okay, let's get started. The central notion that underlies the work that I'm going to talk to you about today is the notion of a social dilemma. And a social dilemma occurs when the interests of an individual is at odds with the interests of the population that that individual is a part of. So the standard textbook example of a social dilemma is clean air. So the best thing for everyone to do is to invest in green technology so we reduce our carbon dioxide emissions and we get clean air. But the best thing for me to do is not spend my money on green technology, free ride off all the contributions that you guys make, free ride off all the green technology you guys invest in. I get all the benefits of clean air, and I don't have to pay for it. So my interest, so if everyone behaved like me, selfishly, there would be no clean air. However, the best thing for everyone is to invest and get the clean air. So my interest, being selfish, is at odds with the interests of the population to invest in the green technology. And this is an example of a global public good, a public good where the public good impacts everyone. Now, how do behavioral researchers study public goods, social dilemmas? They do so by using a public goods game. And typically these games are done in laboratories, and here's how they work. So there'll be n players, and this game is often repeated, round after round. Each round, a player gets some endowment E, and the action of each player is to contribute some amount between 0 and E simultaneously with all the other players. And the payoff to player P, is their endowment minus their contribution. So that's how much they decided to keep, plus the sum of the contributions of everyone times some constant factor A, and A is assumed to be greater than 1. What that captures is that the public good is worth more than just the amount of money it took to get the public good. Clean air is worth more than just the amount of money you need to spend to get clean air. It helps our children, their children, etc. And we divide by n to capture the fact that everyone benefits from this public good. Now, I will copy this over on the next slide and examine how does this payoff function capture the notion of a social dilemma. Okay? Say you're player P. Consider what happens if you increase your contribution by 1 unit. Okay, your player P, you increase your contribution by 1 unit. You increase CP by 1 unit. So this amount goes down by 1, right? Right here. This summation goes up by 1, because CP went up by 1, and it gets multiplied by A over n. Okay? So what changed was minus 1 plus A over n, right? And that's assumed to be less than 0. What does that mean? For every unit that player P increases his contribution, he got a negative return. The best thing for player P to do is contribute 0, therefore. Now, consider what happens if player P increases their contribution by 1 unit. Consider what happens to the social welfare. Social welfare is the sum of all the utility functions. Okay? For player P, this term went down by 1, because this went up by 1, so you get a minus 1. Okay? Now for every player, CP went up by 1, and CP is in this sum for every player. So for every player, their utility went up by A over n. There's n players, so social welfare went up by A. and that's assumed to be positive. So when player P increases his contribution by 1 unit, the social welfare increased. Therefore, the best thing for everyone to do is to contribute the full amount. What maximizes social welfare? So this captures the key idea, the key notion of a social dilemma. The notion that the best thing for me to do is at odds with the best thing for the population as a whole. Now, social dilemmas have been studied for a minimum of 40 years. Okay? They've been studied in economics, political science, anthropology, evolutionary biology, etc., etc. And one of the unifying themes among these lines of work is that in all these studies, all players play with each other. And that is the main point of departure for what I'm going to present today. What I'm going to present today, I'm going to study social dilemmas in networks. First static ones, later dynamic ones. Now, when might there be a social dilemma in a network? So I'll give you a few motivating examples on this slide. For example, think about your favorite social networking site. Think about Facebook, right? Why should I spend time posting links, coming up with funny, clever status updates, when I can just lurk, free ride off all my friends' links and posts, and just enjoy Facebook that way, right? Another example, polluting the ground or the groundwater. Okay, say I'm a small business owner. Why should I pay to properly dispose of toxic waste? If I dump it in the ground, I get all the benefits of getting rid of the waste, but I don't have to pay for it, right? And moreover, that action might disproportionately affect people who are nearby me geographically, but might not affect people who are far away from me geographically. Another example is property values. You guys are all too young to probably think about this, except for Jason. And that is, the best thing for everyone in a neighborhood to do is keep their lawns nice, their houses painted nice, so everyone has high property values. Why should I do that? I can just, if everyone else has nice houses and lawns, I cannot spend my Saturday mornings mowing the lawn, free ride off of their contributions. My property values stay high without the effort. Moreover, that behavior might really impact my neighborhood, but not a neighborhood three neighborhoods down or the next city over. Another example is upkeep of common areas in housing, in housing or apartments. For example, if the best thing for everyone to do would be keep the park in the common area nice, but why should I do that? I can just enjoy the park and not have to clean it up. That might affect, my behavior might affect my apartment building, but not the three apartment buildings over. The point I'm making with all these examples is there are situations where a person's actions can disproportionately affect those nearby in either a social metric or geographic metric, but not impact people further away. There's a question?
Yeah, good question. I'm trying to understand, this is, sorry for my ignorance, but what is the end use of this type of analysis? It's trying to be descriptive, and so understanding what's happening there, or trying to be, like predict what's going to happen. So because it's obviously you're missing a huge amount of information in any of this simplistic model.
Absolutely. So in any model that you do, there's this trade-off you have to make between tractability of the model and realism, right? So the research question I have in mind here that I'm going to talk about today is how does the network topology influence people's ability to cooperate? Okay? And that's the question I'm after here. And these are the standard sort of games that people use to study this question. And I'm just going to show you now how I adapt them to the network setting to answer that research question. Okay, so how do we take a public goods game and adapt it to the network setting? Here's how we do it. Now the players are nodes in a network or graph. If you're a social scientist, it's a network. If you're a computer scientist, it's a graph. It's all the same thing. Again, the game is repeated. Each round, player gets an endowment E. And player P will contribute some amount between 0 and E simultaneously with all the other players. So far, nothing's changed. Here's where the new stuff comes in. The payoff to player P is the endowment minus the contribution, okay? Which is how much he decided to keep. Same as before. But this is where the new stuff is. Now, the second term is the sum over P's neighbors and P himself of those contributions. The sum of the contributions of player P and P's neighbors. Gamma P means P's neighbors. Okay? So so player P is in a network, it's the sum of the contributions of the people around him and P himself. Times some constant factor A divided by D plus 1. D is player P's degree. And in all these experiments I'm going to talk about, actually, in the first half of this talk, everyone's going to have the same degree. It's a regular graph. So that models that player P and all his neighbors benefit from the public good equally. Okay, the reason why we had a regular graph is, if you think about it for a moment, if you allow degree heterogeneity for a moment, people are playing different games, right? The marginal rate of return, this is the marginal rate of return, economists call it marginal per capita rate of return. And if you change that, people are playing different games. So we just want to study the homogeneous case where everyone's playing the same game first. Okay. Okay, right, and that's the returns. So this term was the return from P's contributions and his neighbor's contributions. Okay, yeah, before I go on, please ask me any questions.
So is there any purpose for this endowment P? Because if you're not giving player endowment is the payoff, it's just a constant deviate from this, right? It wouldn't really change any structure of the game.
Yeah, so, okay, I'll answer your question sort of two ways. In one way, E's kind of like, if you think about, for example, like the examples I was given, like mowing your lawn on Saturdays, right? E's like the amount of effort you have, time you spend that day, right? So it might change like week in, week out.
Mm-hmm.
You might have the same amount week in, week out. But the other way to think about it is, like experimentally, I need to give people some money to play the game with, right? I don't want people playing with the money out of their pocket, right? So that's another way to think about it. More questions? Okay, if you don't understand something, stop me now, because the rest of this talk is not going to make any sense. And I'd rather you guys get something out of it, and we skip a few slides at the end. So if there's anything unclear about the setup, please ask now. Yes, no. I'm not going to go on until at least, yeah, good. All right. But anyway, like I said, stop anytime with questions. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about, that's the game. I'm going to talk about how we conducted an experiment using that game. Okay. Typically, these experiments are done in classrooms. There's one problem with that. I work at Microsoft. We don't have classrooms, and we don't even have undergraduates. So necessity was the mother of all invention, so I used Mechanical Turk. And dumb question, how many people are familiar with Mechanical Turk? I thought so. It's funny, like I gave this talk like 2-3 years ago, and it's like one person raised their hand, but now everybody raised their hand. I'll breeze through this real quick. I'll just skip all this. What do we use Mechanical Turk for? The experimenter is the requester. Okay, so that's me. The job is the experiment, and the workers are the paid participants. So we use Mechanical Turk for two things primarily: to recruit participants and as a payment API. And that's like the whole ballgame. And right. So typically Mechanical Turk is used to do asynchronous tasks where one person can do the job, and then another person, and another person. Whereas here we use it for a synchronous situation. And if you want to hear more about how we did that, I'll just talk about that at the end. I'm happy to take questions about that. Okay, so here are the experimental parameters. So first we gave the workers a quiz to make sure they understood everything, and also to make sure that they knew that the people they're playing with understood everything. There's 10 rounds, 45 seconds for the first two, 30 seconds for the rest. The endowment for each round was given in terms of points, 10 points. The marginal rate of return was 0.4. And what we borrowed that from Fair and Gachter. They did this pioneering study back in 2000. The reason why we chose 0.4 is we can compare our results to their results. Okay, and I'll do that in a slide or two. So the payoff for player P is 10 minus their contribution, 0.4 times the sum of player P's contribution and all of player P's neighbors. Okay? For most of the experiments I'm telling you about today, we had 24 players playing simultaneously, but I will tell you about a few that had only 4. And then we paid 50 cents as a flat rate for passing the quiz, and then half a cent per point that they earned in the game. Yeah?
Did you actually give the players the equations or just descriptions about
The equations, and they had to. We gave them the equations, and in the quiz we'd say like, if you contributed whatever 6 and your neighbors contributed 23, what would your payoff be?
Right.
That kind of thing. We gave them. I have to be honest. I thought the quiz was pretty hard, And I mean, don't tell anyone I didn't pass it the first time. But I thought the pass rate was going to be like 10, 20%. It was like 80%. They were really good. Yeah. Yeah. More questions?
They also know the network.
I'll tell you about that next. Okay, here's a little screenshot. Everything up here and down here, that's Mechanical Turk. It's Amazon's code. Everything in this little iframe, this is an iframe, is my code running on my server. It's hard to see, so I'll zoom in on the right panel, and then I'll zoom in on the left panel. The right panel says, this is round 2 out of 10. You've got 14 points so far. Your endowment is 10. Please enter your contribution. You have 25 seconds left. Okay? And then on the left side was you and all your neighbors. And each node is annotated with how much they contributed the last round. Okay? Now, to answer Tan's question, in the experiments I'm going to talk to you about today, we only showed them one hop, your neighbors. We did do experiments where you showed the ego network, which is one hop and whether or not your neighbors are connected, and if so, to whom. And then we also did experiments where we showed 2 hops. And that's what it would look like that on this side. But I'm not going to talk about those today. I'm just going to talk about the one hop stuff. Okay? Yeah?
The set of neighbors you're playing against was fixed?
Correct.
And how many rounds?
10 rounds, 24 players. And that was all common knowledge. Yeah?
Yeah, they always know how many rounds. Okay.
Correct. More questions?
What's the number?
That's going to come up later, but I'm sure you saw that coming.
1 column 7. What does it mean again?
Oh, node 1, that's
Node
neighbor
1.
1, and he contributed 7 last round.
I see. Okay.
Yeah?
How was the net force determined?
I'll tell you in 1 second. Yeah?
How many of these nodes are also neighbors of each other?
So in this example, I can't remember the JSON to make sure off the top of my head, but just give me 1 second. I'll just take, since you guys are asking me. Okay, so that's the setup. Any more questions about the setup? I'll tell you what networks we used in a minute.
Yeah.
But any more questions about that?
I was going to say, well, kind of like the network. In the case of a fully connected network,
Yeah.
that's like the same as the previous
Yeah,
network, right?
exactly. Yeah. Okay, so before I get to the networks, let me just do, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a calibration exercise we did. Like I said, we compared to this classroom laboratory study by Fair and Gachter, okay? They had cliques of size 4, so we did cliques of size 4. Their marginal per cap rate of return was 0.4. We did the same thing, okay? X-axis here is round, 1 through 10. Y-axis is the average contribution level, okay? Black curve is what we got. Gray curve is Fair and Gachter got. They were kind enough to give us their data. That's what they got. Few things to notice. First off, the error bars almost always overlap. Secondly, the points are almost always on top of each other. Third, you can do statistical tests on the round-over-round contributions, the distribution of round-over-round contributions. You can't reject the null hypothesis that they're the same. And so this was kind of really good news for us. It made us believe that if we come up with something on Mechanical Turk, it is generalizable to the classroom. Okay? So the Mechanical Turk experiments replicated the classroom experiments very, very well. And that was nice. Any questions about that? Now I'm going to get on to the network stuff. Yeah?
Question about the example. US only or international?
US only for latency reasons. Yeah. And by the way, a friend of mine did an experiment, and I told him use US, like a synchronous experiment. I told him to use US only, and he didn't, and he was like, man, you were right. So, all right.
Fair and Gachter is for Switzerland, right?
Yeah. Fair and Gachter was a bunch of kids in Switzerland, and this is a bunch of kids in the US. So, not kids, people. Sorry. Okay. Right. Now, everyone's asking me about the networks. These are the networks we used. Okay? 5 of them. Cliques. Says 4 disjoint cliques of size 6. Okay? Kind of a baseline, right? Now, okay. Paired cliques. How did we get paired cliques from cliques? Here's what we did. This guy used to have an edge, and these two used to have an edge. All we did was swap their endpoints. So he used to be connected to him. I'm going to make him connected to him. He used to be connected to him. I'm going to make him connected to him. That's it. So if you have an edge x1, x2, y1, y2, you make x1 connected to y2, x2 connected to y1. That's it. You do that twice, you get this. You do it twice more, you get that. You do it a few more times at random, you get a small world graph. You do it infinitely many times at random, you get a random regular graph. So why did we choose this funny thing, this funny transformation? The reason is it preserves the degree and the number of edges. That's the same thing in all the graphs, but it changes the topology How does it change the topology? I'll tell you on the next slide. It changes the number of triangles, the clustering coefficient. I'll get to that next slide. But before I do that, let me pause. What is your hypothesis? Do you think there was an effect of network topology on contribution behavior? A. B. If so, which one of these networks had the highest contribution levels? Cliques had the highest? Okay. Any other guesses?
Did the participants know the topology at all?
Let's just restrict our attention to the cases where it was just the one-hop neighbors for this talk and say no.
But so they didn't know, like,
No.
which I would guess no effect.
No effect, and I heard no effect in cliques. So let's
Whenever we want with topologies, an individual node just knew that he had 6 neighbors.
5
neighbors.
Yeah. And like I said, in this talk, that's what I'm restricting to. We did other experiments too, but yeah.
So from a local point of view, they all look the same for the
Correct.
individual.
Right. Okay. So here's what here's what we thought was going to happen. It's known that people are conditional cooperators. What does that mean? It means that the more my neighbors contribute, the more I am likely to contribute. Okay? So here was a hypothesis. We thought, say there's a guy contributing a lot. Okay? His neighbors are conditional cooperators, so he's contributing a lot, so his neighbors are going to contribute. Okay? Then we thought, well, wait a minute. If there's an edge between these guys, and they're conditional cooperators, they're contributing more because of this guy playing 10, so they're going to feed back on each other and contribute yet even more. That was our hypothesis. So therefore, we thought the more triangles there are in the graph, the higher the contribution levels would be. Okay? So, everybody here know what clustering coefficient is? Yes? Anybody not? It's okay to say no. Jeez. Okay, so the clustering coefficient is very simple. The clustering coefficient for a node is the number of triangles incident on that node divided by the number of possible triangles incident on the node. You average that for every node, you get the clustering coefficient for the graph. It's that simple. So cliques, my decimal points turned into commas somehow. I don't really know how that happened. I'm blaming Yorgios on that one. Whatever, I don't care. Those are decimal points. Anyway, so cliques had the most triangles, and it went steadily down. And so random regular had 10 times. There's 10 times more triangles in cliques than random regular. That's what you should take away from this graph. Okay. All right. So now I'll show you what the results were. On the x-axis is round. On the y-axis, average contribution. We'll have 5 lines, 1 line for every graph, right? And the conjecture was cliques would be on top. And so here, what do we see? You might look at this immediately and say, oh my God, paired cliques, it's on top. Oh my God. No, not quite. Here's what's going on. First off, observe the error bars are overlapping like crazy. You can't even see them because they're all on top of each other. Secondly, observe the following. Any amount of variation in the first round contribution levels has to be noise. The network couldn't affect the first round. And that much effect persists the whole way through the graph. If it started a little high, it stayed a little high. If it started a little low, it stayed a little low. And third, if you do statistical tests on the round-over-round contributions, you can't reject them. Okay, so what do we conclude? Topology has little to no effect, none that we could detect on cooperation. So somebody got it right. Great job. Now, so our hypothesis about this reinforcement was wrong. Okay, that didn't happen. It turns out, and I'm not going to go into much detail. I can at the end. If one guy contributes a lot, it influences his neighbors to contribute a lot. But there's no that triangle, that edge being there, doesn't make a difference. The effects don't propagate at all.
But
yeah.
Wouldn't there also be a negative effect if your neighbors contributed less than you would?
Totally.
So it goes both ways.
Lovely. Lovely. So, okay. That observation. Why do things go down? Okay, first of all, I'm not the first person to observe that things go down. That's been observed like 50 years ago, okay? If not longer. Okay, so why do things go down? It's known that there's 3 kinds of players, at least, okay? Cooperators who contribute a lot, almost the whole time. Defectors who contribute nothing, almost the whole time. And conditional cooperators. Like I said, they often make up about half the population. And how do they behave? They contribute more, the more their neighbors contribute. Now think about this for a moment. This observation this gentleman just brought up. You're a conditional cooperator, and you see a bunch of guys defect. You're going to defect, okay? Because you're a conditional cooperator. Now, if conditional cooperators make up about half the population, they're going to start defecting, and the defection is going to spread, okay? And that's one hypothesis as to why you get this decline. So, the next part of this talk is the following. We're going to attack exactly that. If we let conditional cooperators choose not just their action, but who they're playing with, can they avoid the defectors and keep the contribution levels high? That's the next part of this talk. Still, we're going to move to dynamic networks. Yeah.
Do you have the distributions of the player types that you found, and or did you have to have confederates playing a certain strategy?
Okay. You can learn the types from the data we have, and we actually have a upcoming paper in EC about that. And you can have confederates as well if you want. Yeah. I'm not going to talk about any of that today, but yeah, if you want more about that, it's in the paper. Yeah.
How much is this result is influenced by the fact that agents only know the neighbors?
So if you okay, this is the part I didn't allude to earlier. If you go to ego or 2-hop, nothing changes. I didn't want to give that away earlier, because if I tell you that, then it gives this away, so I didn't want to say it. So we checked all that. Yeah.
I don't know what ego or 2-hop means.
Ego is it's just a little change than before. Instead of just seeing your one edge to your neighbors, if there's an edge between your neighbors, you know it. Make sense? That's ego. 2-hop means you see everything within 2 steps from you. Distance 2. All the nodes and all the edges within distance 2 of you.
So that could potentially change the beginning, because here the beginning is totally symmetric between all of the 5 experiments.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you went to one of those, the beginning would no longer be totally symmetric.
Turns out it didn't matter. It turns out the beginning didn't change.
I'm a little bit confused as to why these beginnings are actually different. Does this mean you didn't do the experiment enough to get the error bars down to, like with the first hop, like you think that, I don't know.
Okay, couple things. First off, there's just variation in types. You might get a few more cooperators in one experiment, a few more defectors in another, right? So you sample from the pool. Some things start higher, some things start lower. We did 4. Everything I'm reporting here, I should have mentioned it. There's 4 runs for each topology. So there's like 100. So 4 times 24. There's 100 data points on that point right there, times 5 topologies. So it's a pretty decent chunk of data. All right. Well, let me carry on. Any more questions? Okay. So now I'm going to talk about cooperation in dynamic networks. Okay, so the research question is the following, just to remind you. If we allow players to choose who they interact with and their strategies, can cooperation be promoted and sustained? What we're going to show is that allowing cooperators, and actually allowing conditional cooperators to avoid defectors results in sustained levels of high cooperation. Okay, so, but before I go down this road too far, when might this happen? When might there be a social dilemma occurring in a dynamic network? Okay? Think about my example about property values, right? If nobody around me is keeping up their houses and their property, and I am, I can move. I can sell my house and move to a neighborhood where everyone is, right? So it was a public good, because there was a public good in keeping up your house, but I can change who I'm interacting with by moving to a different neighborhood. Think about what I said earlier about apartment buildings and dorms and things like that. If everyone's keeping the park clean or the common areas clean, I can stay, but if no one is, I can just move to a different one, right? It's a public good to keep it clean. Why should I do it? I can free ride off everyone else's. And finally, my personal favorite is you can think about work collaboration. So I work at Microsoft Research. So the best thing for everyone is to have an intellectual environment, contribute to each other's projects, collaborate. Maybe the best thing for me is just do the barest amount I can to get on as many papers as I can. If everyone did that, the lab environment would be pretty poor. And then someone could rewire, cut their links, move to a different lab, and form new ties where there's a better environment.
So it would be the case, I mean, maybe in friendships or collaborations it's different, but like anyone would want to move to a good neighborhood or a good housing thing, right? So it's going to be important the nature of who has control over.
Totally.
Right.
Okay.
links are forwarded and separate.
That's a lovely, absolute. I'm gonna give me that. I'm gonna take that one during my related work slide. Okay. Not this slide, but the next one. Okay. So what we're gonna do is figure out how to boost cooperation levels. Okay. And there's an enormous literature on this. Okay. And there's surveys I'll point to, and there's 3 things that work really well. I'm just gonna highlight 3 strands of this literature. It's too big to survey in one slide. Punishment works really well. So here's how that works. So like I'm interacting with Jason, and he's not contributing very much. It's just the way he is. So I can punish him. I can pay a few points, and he'll go down by a few points. And it turns out that works really well to keep contribution levels high. There's a little problem with that, though, if you think about it for a minute, is that I paid a few points, he went down a few points, money just kind of leaks out of the system. It just kind of goes away. Okay? Next thing that works pretty well is rewards. So Tan's very, very, very generous fella. Known him for years. So he contributes a lot. I contribute a lot. I can give him a few points. Just say, hey, man, nice work. I'll give him a few points. That keeps contribution levels high, and it avoids this issue of money leaking out of the system. That works if you keep who you're interacting with constant for the whole experiment. If you shuffle who people are interacting with, that doesn't work so well. And another thing that works really well is cheap talk. So cheap talk just means talking among players, but it's not binding. Like I can say, hey, Daniel, I swear, I'm going to contribute 10 next round. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but it's just what I said. And that actually works really well. And actually, like just talking at the beginning, not even talking between rounds, actually works really well. Anyway, it's a very strong result. These mechanisms, like I said, they're great. They work really well. But what we're going to focus on today is letting people choose who they're interacting with. And there's actually a few mechanisms for that. The first one is ostracism. This is one of my personal favorites. It's like bad reality TV meets cooperation games. So ostracism works in the following way. It's like if we're all like playing a game together, like in this room, and like, Daniel's not contributing that much, we vote, right? And if he gets like more than half the vote, like he gets kicked out and he has to play with the other ostracized guys. Okay? So what happens here is what happens is that the cooperators end up in one group cooperating a lot, and the defectors end up in another group defecting a lot. So you just get segregation. People don't actually change their behavior that much. And if you average it out, it's not that different. It's a little better, but it's not that different. But what you get is segregation, so the cooperators can play by themselves. And there's another way of doing it. It's just exogenously sorting. You can get people to play like a few rounds, for example, and like the top 4 contributors will go in a group. The next 4 will go in a group. The next 4 will go in a group. Again, that keeps the contribution levels high among the groups that were contributing high already. But the groups that were contributing low, they just carry on contributing low. They don't change their behavior. Okay, now I'm going to tackle, what's your name?
Brian.
Brian's question right now. And so basically simultaneously to this work, Rand et al. Did a study. And what they did was the following. Between choosing your action, they would pick 2 nodes at random. Okay? If those nodes were not connected, either node could decide, I want that edge to be there, and that edge would be there. So it was random selection of edges and unilateral edge creation. Okay? And they got cooperation levels to go kind of flat. It didn't really increase, but they kind of got flat. What we're going to do is something a little different. We're going to let players pick who they want to interact with. So I want to form a link to Daniel. I will propose a link to Daniel. Then he has to accept it. So it's bilateral edge creation and purposeful choice, endogenous choice of who you're going to interact with. That's how edges are going to be created. Edges are going to be deleted. Either one of us wants to delete the edge, they can delete the edge. Unilateral edge deletion. So it's kind of like dating, You both have to agree to date, but either one can agree to break it. And we're going to see we get pretty high levels of cooperation. So this is one motivation for this work. There's actually a second motivation for this work that I don't have time to go into today. And it comes from the modeling literature. A lot of people, there's agent-based models that some say, some make certain predictions about how rewiring will affect cooperation levels, and some make opposite predictions. And that was a sort of second motivation. I'll just point you guys to the paper for that one. And Nicola Morlica, Brendan Lucier, and Rogers, a local crew, they did a very nice theoretical paper that makes some predictions about what would happen in a similar setting. Yeah?
So I have a question. If I sample people at random, what's the typical fraction of cooperators can I find? Do you know?
Okay, it's less than 50%. I want to say something like, I don't know off the top of my head, I'm saying this with some uncertainty, but I'm going to say something like 10-ish%, under 20 anyway. Yeah.
Does the rewiring change the degree distribution?
Yes, it will. We'll see that. More questions? Okay, now I'm going to talk about how we design this experiment. Okay, this dynamic experiment. Okay, social dilemmas, like I said, they're often studied in lab experiments, and they're often studied with public goods games, as I talked about before, but now we're going to switch to prisoner's dilemma. Why? For that reason exactly, that nodes are going to have different degrees now, and it's a little bit easier to handle that with prisoner's dilemma. So this is the payoff matrix we're going to use. Is everybody familiar with prisoner's dilemma? Do I need to, Jason, do I need to go over this for you? Real quick, just for Jason, what maximizes social welfare is cooperate. It's easy to see because it's the cell with the highest sum. Defect is a dominant strategy. It's easy to see because if you're the column player, you go from 4 to 7, you increase your payoff. If you go from -1 to 1, you increase your payoff. So defect is better for the column player. The matrix is symmetric, so defect is also better for the row player. So DD is the dominant strategy, and it's also the strategy that minimizes social welfare. You can see that by it's the cell with the lowest sum. Okay, so how do we? Huh?
Thanks.
Just at least I can do. Okay, so there's 24 players. Their actions are going to be cooperate or defect. There's going to be 12 rounds, and the points are going to accrue, and we'll pay them at the end. Now, how do we define the payoff? Okay, let's say you're this guy, and he's cooperating, right? He's chosen to cooperate. So so you look at your payoff matrix. You're a cooperator. You get 4 points for every cooperator. So if there's n sub c guys cooperating, you get 4 times n sub c. Now you're a cooperator. How much do you get for a defector? You get -1 if you're attached to a defector. So you get minus n sub d. That's your payoff. Number of defectors. Same thing. You're a defector. You get 7 times the number of cooperators. 4 n sub c plus 1 times n sub d is your payoff. Clear? All right. You choose one action. You play it against all your neighbors, and you get the sum. That's all you got to remember. Lovely. Okay. Now, how do we do the rewiring? How do we do the edge update? As I said before, the bilateral edge formation takes 2 stages. First off, you will propose to V, say, and if V accepts, the edge is formed. If V rejects, no edge. Okay? Similar, on the other hand, if there's an edge between you and V already, either one of them can decide to delete that edge, and then it's gone. Yeah?
So, in order to propose new edges, you need to be able to see the history of people that you couldn't see before, right?
He can give this talk for me. Lovely. You can see, I'll show it in the slide. You can see your last 5, everybody's last 5 contributions, but I'll show it in a minute. Before I get to that, we did what I call a 3x3 plus 1 design. Okay, so after every 1, 3, or 6 strategy rounds, there was 12 rounds, after every 1, 3, or 6 of them, you could update k links where k was 1, 3, or 5. Okay, what does that mean? Let's say R was 3, every 3 rounds, k was 5, you could rewire 5 links. So after round 3, rewire 5 links. After round 6, rewire 5. After round 9, rewire 5. After round 12, game's over. No sense in letting them rewire because the game is over. Yeah.
By rewire, you mean propose or actually?
K, rewire means, when I say K, I mean the sum of the number of proposals plus deletions is at most K. So say...
Or proposals, not necessarily formations, because you may propose and none of them accept.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So proposal is risky, right?
Okay.
Right? So sum of the number of proposals plus deletions is at most K, right? Now, one thing I want to highlight is come up in a minute. Like I said, if R was 3, K was 5, every 3 rounds you got to rewire 5 links. So each player got 15 rewirings in this game. Clear? Let's say R was 6, so after 6 rounds, and K was 3, there was 3 rewirings. So after round 6, each player could rewire 3, and at the end the game would end. Okay? So in this case, everybody rewired 3 times. Again, that's going to come up in a few slides. And then when I 3x3 plus 1, we did the static case again to compare to with no rewire. Okay? Yeah?
Do people see who's proposed a new link with them, or is it?
I'll show you.
Basically, history probably.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the screenshot. Okay. This is the payoff matrix, so they won't have to remember it. There's 9 seconds left. It's a little blurry. These are the players linked to you, and their past 5 rounds. Actions. These are the players not linked to you, and they're past 5 rounds. Actions. Okay? Now you can decide if you want to cooperate or defect, or if you want to, and then after you decide that, if it's rewiring round, you decide who you want to propose to or reject. Yeah?
Do you know what the equilibrium of this game looks like?
Yes.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
a long answer.
No, it's not. It's just to defect. It's not. It's unique in that the equilibrium is to defect how and cut as many ties as you can. But what you might get at the end is not the graph. For example, let's say you start with a clique. You might not have enough rewirings to delete.
Okay, so there's no equilibrium in which anyone should
Correct.
block it.
Okay, what graphs did I use to start with? Right? These guys need something to get going. And in half the experiments we use cliques, and half the experiments we use random. Okay? Yeah, it's just backwards in Dutch.
Yeah,
It's-
okay, it wasn't obvious to me that
It takes like,
the rewiring.
if you sit around for 10, it's not a hard proof. You sit around for 10 minutes, you get it. It's not.
No, I believe it.
Yeah. Okay, any questions about the setup or the dynamic setting? I'm going to go to the results in a minute, so if the setup's not clear, it's not going to make sense, so just stop me now.
Are links cut first before new proposals are?
Simultaneous.
So then how do they control the total number then? So
You get 5 actions. So let's say it's rewire 5 links, right? Number of proposals plus number of deletions is at most 5.
okay.
Proposals. More questions?
And there's a second stage of accepting proposals.
Exactly.
That you get any number of.
Correct.
You're cut off from everybody else. What happens
0.
to you? And you're done.
More questions?
Each point worth like $1 or something.
Say again?
So each point is worth like $1 or something.
Oh, each
So-
point was worth like half a cent.
Uh,
All right. But to answer your question properly, people got like $1.50 typically from this experiment.
Did you see the network topology?
Yeah, I'll show you.
No, when you showed the players, did they see the network?
No, it's too complicated. It's a heinous graph layout problem.
So, for instance, someone
I'll show you in a second, and you'll see what I mean.
neighbors could, you know,
They know they have no neighbors.
all the time, and they look great, but they don't have any neighbors because they're cooperating with nobody.
So that, but you have complete information, right? You know, everyone sees you cooperating the whole time. So
Right.
someone will propose, or you'll propose.
They see me cooperating all the time, but I don't have any neighbors, so
It's kind of cheap, right? Like they don't know that. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So here's what I'm gonna. Okay. So here's what I'm. Okay. On the x-axis here is the total number of partner updates per player. So this black point right here is static. 0 updates per day per player. 1/6. That means 1 rewiring every 6 rounds. So each player got 1 rewiring. That's why he's 1 on the x-axis. This is 3/6. 3 rewirings every 6 rounds. That's why he's 3 on the x-axis. 5/6. That's why he's 5. 1 rewiring every 3 rounds. Think about that for a minute. You get 3 rewirings. So he's 3 on the x-axis. 3 rewirings every 3 rounds. He's 9 on the x-axis. 5 rewirings every 3 rounds. 15 on the x-axis. That makes sense? The y-axis is the fraction of contribution actions. So 0's here. What you can see is as you turn the dials and get more and more rewiring, cooperation levels got higher and higher. And they kind of plateaued, but still got a little bit better. Okay? Diminishing returns. A little bit of rewiring helped. A lot of rewiring helped less. Make sense? Is that axis clear? It's a little tricky. Okay? So, yeah, that's the point I'm making. A little bit of rewiring helped. A lot of rewiring helped, but it helped less. Okay?
does it still drop over time?
Exactly. Okay, now, I'm going to drill down a little deeper now. X-axis is round. Y-axis is fraction of contribution levels. Okay? This is like all the plots I was showing before. Black curve is static. Blue curve is 1 rewiring every round. Okay? What do you see? Big gap at the beginning. Contribution levels start high, stay high, and then plummet. Okay? I would say that cooperation levels were promoted, but not sustained. Okay? And just to show you I'm not cherry picking results, the green curve is 3 rewirings every round, red curve is 5 rewirings every round. Same behavior.
Is that an end of game phenotype?
Hold on. I'll show you. How about that? So this is one run. Okay? We started with cliques, there's 5 rewirings every round. Okay? Sorry. White means they can cooperated. Gray is going to mean they defected. Right now everyone's cooperating. Round 1, everyone cooperated. Right? Round 2, everyone cooperated, added a bunch of edges. Sorry. Wait, what happened? Oh, sorry. Round 1, everyone cooperated, added a bunch of edges. Round 2, almost everyone cooperated. That guy defected. All right. Round 3, there's 3 defectors. Round 4, round 5. By the way, Jason, this is why I didn't lay out the graph. It kind of just looks like a hairball for people. Round 5, round 6. Okay, here's what happens. So round 7, right? We're just about halfway through the game. There's 4 defectors, and they're attached. Their neighbor set is this group of nodes. Okay? Here's what's going to happen. Some more defectors, some more defectors, some more defectors. That's called a cascade. Defection just spread. Okay, it's round 12. Okay? What happened here? What happened? Okay, so here's one thing that happened. X-axis is round, y-axis is the average degree. Observe average degree only increased. It stayed the same sometimes and it went up sometimes. But it never went down. I was a little curious. I was trying to get the cooperators to avoid the defectors. So when someone defected, their edge didn't get cut. The degree didn't go down. What's going on? Think about it for a moment. Say you're a cooperator. You're attached to a defector. You're getting -1 for that. Okay? Let's just say for a moment you only have 1 rewiring to do. You could cut this edge and save 1, go up by 1, or you could propose an edge. If you propose this edge, it was accepted with 90% probability, over 90% probability. So you got 4 times 0.9 in expectation. So what are you going to do? You're going to leave that edge and add this edge. Now, say you're a defector, well, you're getting positive no matter what, so you're just going to leave all your edges. So the cooperators were not incentivized to avoid the defectors. They just left the edges there. Now, beautiful thing about mechanical Turk, you can just change your experiment, run it again. Love it. What do? We change this -1 to -5. So now the cooperator is attached to a defector, he's getting -5. If he's faced with this decision, cut this edge or add this edge, it's rational to cut that. Other thing we did was defectors went from getting 1 to -1 for each other. That's the new path matrix on the rest. All right, now what happened? Okay, black curve is static. Red curve is 5 rewirings every round with the old payoffs. You saw this curve a few slides ago. Blue curve, 5 rewirings every round with the new payoffs. And somebody asked me about the endgame effect. That's going to come up right here. We have 90% cooperation levels for all but the last 2 rounds, and we'll see in a minute where that comes from. It's going to be a qualitatively different place than the previous. Oh, right, again, just to show you I'm not cherry-picking results, the red curve you just saw in the last slide, blue is 1 rewiring every round, green was something cute, 23 rewirings every round. You could change your entire neighborhood every time. Rewiring's free for everybody. It didn't make much difference beyond 5. It's about the same. Okay, so let's see what happened. Again, start with the cliques, 5 rewirings every round. White means cooperate, gray means defect. Added a bunch of edges round 1, everyone's cooperating. Add a bunch of edges round 2, everyone's cooperating. Round 3, this is a clique now, okay? It's a cooperating clique. Round 4, round 5, round 6, round 7, round 8, round 9. Oh, one guy defected, and what happened? Everyone cut their ties. Excuse me. Round 10, a few guys defected. They got isolated. These dudes are in this nice, concentrated, cooperating clique. Now, endgame effect. A few more guys cooperated, they isolated. And if you really want to see the endgame effect, there it is. Everyone defected in the last one. So there we are. So now, just to show you, intuitively, we saw these defectors getting punished. But here's another way to see it. X-axis is round, y-axis is average degree. You can see that the average degree was going up, but then as the defectors kicked in, it started to come back down. So they were actually getting punished. And this top one here is the analogous one as before. Static case, 1 rewiring every round, 5 rewirings every round, 23 rewirings every round. You can see, again, a little bit of rewiring helps, and more rewiring helps, but it helps less. All right. I just got a few minutes left, so I'll just start wrapping up. Okay, what can we conclude from all this? First off, from the static case. There was no reinforcement of contributions due to triangles. We thought there would be. Turns out there wasn't. You win some, you lose some. This is the punchline of this talk. If this is the only sentence you remember, let it be this one. Endogenous partner selection can promote and sustain cooperation. Now, there's a few caveats. First off, a low rewiring rate is enough. A little bit of rewiring helped, right? But bilateral edge creation was key. Compared to prior work that did random choice of edges and unilateral creation, we got much higher cooperation levels. Secondly, we had to make the deletions worthwhile, right? If it had to be in a cooperator's interest to cut a tie with a defector. They weren't going to look down the road and see it coming. And so we submit that this is a promising new lever for promoting cooperation. Where am I going with all this? A long-standing research agenda of mine is to understand how network topology influences behavior. Back when I was in grad school, I did a bunch of experiments where we showed that network topology influences people's ability to coordinate in the graph coloring experiments. It didn't have a big effect on their ability to cooperate. So we want to look at other problems now and see when it has an effect. I'm carrying on looking at dynamic networks. In the real world, networks are dynamic. So let's study those experimentally. See what effects we can see. The coevolution of strategy and behavior and topology. And methodologically, there's two questions I'm going after. How big can we make experiments with mechanical Turk? I've successfully done experiments with 60 people simultaneously. I think I can scale it to hundreds. I don't think I can scale it to thousands of mechanical Turk. I might need another platform. And one of the things I'm working on now with collaborating with an ethnographer is interview these people. Who are they? Why are they working on crowdsourcing stuff? So I'll stop there. We did a how-to guide with Winter Mason. It was in Behavioral Research Methods. It's a psychology methodology journal. The static stuff appeared in PLOS 1, and the dynamic stuff appeared in EC and won a Best Paper Award, and it was also in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences. The journal version was in the Pane. So thank you. Question? Yeah?
I wonder what happens when you make the game longer. Does the plumbing always happen near the end of the game?
So I bet what would happen in that in the modified payoffs, I bet it would happen like sort of two rounds back. In the static case, that's a little less clear. Would it happen like 6 rounds in or halfway through or what? I'm not sure about that.
You could just not tell them, right?
Yeah. So there's a myriad ways to get around this. They all kind of work. They all mitigate the endgame effect, but none of them kill the endgame effect. So here's what I mean. You can do things like not tell them. You can tell them it's going to end between round 10 and 15. You can tell them it's going to end any given round, probability 1/12, whatever. These kind of, they mitigate the endgame effect by like, say, 20-30%, but they don't really kill it. That's why I didn't bother doing it, because I just didn't want to sort of pollute the results that way. Yeah.
What about directly lying to them and saying it's going to end at around 15 and end at 10?
So some people do that. There's this like raging debate in the literature. Like economists don't do deception. Yeah. Psychologists, some do, some don't. Personally, like my feeling is if you don't need to, don't. So don't. That study I'm sure has been done. Wait, let me think about that for a minute. Yeah, there was this study. It's actually by an economist, actually, oddly enough, where he did lie to people in the following way. What he did was they played for K rounds. I don't remember exactly. And then he said, you're going to play for K rounds. And then he said, oh, guys, we got a little extra time, so we're going to play for a few more. And he was analyzing the restart effect. But you're asking about lying at the end. I'm not sure if I know of a paper that does that.
It's the same thing to just present your data for the first year.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. That's a little disingenuous. I'm not going to get into that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Did you ever vary how much each point was worth?
Yeah. In the static case, we did. Let me see. Crap. It's in the paper. I forgot the result. The best answer I can give you is I don't think it had an effect, but it's in here. It's like figure 1b. There's the Faring actor, and then there's the modifying the payoff, and I just forgot what it said.
It's still no effect.
No. I think Yorgos had a question.
I'm guessing that if the people who are playing with people that we actually know, the result would be a little different?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So if you're playing in a real network, like where like in your real neighborhood, there's reputation effects, there's learning effects, and et cetera, et cetera. That's a wonderful question. So
It's not so easy to believe an edge if it's your friends.
I have easier time than most. But yeah, great question. So there's an I've seen a few studies now, and I'm sort of looking in that direction myself, doing these things on like Facebook, playing with your real friends, see what happens there. And there have been like pairwise studies where people play, for example, like Prisoner's Dilemma with their classmates or non-classmates and things like that. There are effects there. Yeah.
So in your experiment, there seems to be no constraint on the eventual node degree, so just keeps increasing.
Absolutely.
In some of the
Yeah.
experiments. What if you put a constraint?
Lovely. So here's why we didn't. Okay. First of all, it's a great question, and I'll give you 2 reasons why we didn't. We didn't know if this was going to work at all. Okay. So if you don't know if you're going to have an effect, turn all the dials on max and look for your effect. Okay. Then if you find one, you can turn the dials back. Okay. The reason being is if you turn all the dials on max, there's no effect, you can walk away quickly. Building and designing these experiments takes a lot of time. Right? So that's one thing. Second reason, let's say you had degree, say the cap is 10. You have degree 10. Now, you want to propose an edge. But to do that, you have to delete an edge first. Now, that's another strategic question that I just wanted the strategic question that's another game going on in here, making the analysis even harder. And I wasn't sure it was going to work with the subtleties I had. So I wanted to just keep it simple first. I couldn't think of a good mechanism to cleanly express, like I only want to propose that edge if I only want to delete this edge if I can propose that edge, that kind of thing. It's kind of hard to do that. So that's why I didn't do that at first. But it's the obvious next question. So.
Any thoughts on a situation where changing your links actually induces some sort of cost? As in, I can't move for free.
Yeah. You certainly wouldn't get any proposals towards the end, right? And you probably get most of your proposals. You probably want as many proposals at the beginning as you could, because to maximize the relationship, right? That's what I would suspect. Yeah. Jason?
So you gave some motivation for switching from the contribution game, investment game to the Prisoner's Dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
With the issue with the degree not being normalized, then it's the contribution changes, your degree changes. For the Prisoner's Dilemma game, though, the more people you play against, the higher your, say, average payoff.
Yes. Yeah.
And so there's this tendency towards really large neighborhoods, which, as was suggested, kind of conflict with the example motivation you had for like setting where you cared about this, where you don't have the flexibility of having such really large neighborhoods. Yeah. And maybe a way to think about that is to have a nonlinear payoff in terms of the number of people you're playing with, or somehow not get credit for having. Because if you're talking about, say, friends, you can't maintain that many friendships.
Correct.
Anyway.
Correct.
And so I don't know. I guess I didn't really see how the Prisoner's Dilemma game was getting rid of something that was bad in the investment game before. It wasn't just adding something, because this whole like making it click, like that seems to be a emergent behavior that's probably not borne out in any real situation.
With like 1,000 players, you're not going to get a 1,000 person.
No.
So okay. First of all, a few things. So I might push back a little bit on just the connection to the motivation. So for example, you could imagine like pollution really impacting a lot of people nearby, right? Or a park really impacting a neighborhood or your housing properties and that kind of thing. But your point is taken, right? So we probably should stick. Okay, what did the going to prisoner's dilemma fix that just scaling up the public goods game wouldn't have had? And that is everyone's playing the same game with the same payoff function. In the public goods game, people's marginal per capita rate of return would have been different. Thus, they're playing different games, right? And you can have edge effects where it's actually not a social dilemma anymore. That's what it fixed. Now, I agree with you that there's further complexities added by, but that's not a function of the game. That's not a function of going to prisoner's dilemma. It's a function of me not capping or not costing the edges. So that part needs to get addressed, but it's not a function. It's independent of prisoner's dilemma. And I agree with you that that's like the obvious next place to go. I just haven't figured out for life yet what's the realistic mechanism here. In the real world, if let's just say I can have 6 close friends at a time, I don't actually have to like swap a friend in and out, right? Like, that's not really how it works, right? I can kind of like make friends with somebody, see how it goes, and then like if someone falls by the wayside, it's kind of sort of. So you kind of have like a soft boundary. I wasn't quite sure how to encode that in any kind of game theoretic sense.
Have you ever, or have you thought about looking at like imperfect knowledge? I guess which you have every player knows every other player's 5 moves, and I'm really wondering how much cooperation is contingent on that imperfect knowledge. So if you introduce noise, that you might have been an ass at your previous company, but this new company might not necessarily know that, right? We don't always know the actions that other people took, and I really think there'd probably be some noise threshold where some of this cooperation might fall into.
So, well, first of all, in this setting, everyone did know everyone's past 5.
Exactly.
But there's no noise.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of funny. Like economists love noise. They put it in everything. It's like hot sauce. They just put noise in it. But no, I see what I understand what your question is, and it's a wonderful question. And in fact, one of the economists at HBS he heard me speak, and he wanted to examine reputation. Exactly what you're asking, reputation effects. So like, if for the first 5 rounds you've been a defector, like how long does it take you to get your reputation back? Now, this exact setup is not the right one for that, because it just, after 5 rounds, your history falls off the window and now you're wiped clean. That's not the right way to do it. So, but this kind of question is a wonderful one to work on. Yeah. Any more?
So you told me that the workers are paid the same amount no matter what. Right?
No, they're played in terms of points.
They're paid.
Of course, yeah. Yeah. More questions? Okay, I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr.